Salutations, listeners. Sivalis Valeo, Vala Magulis, Nanu Nanu. Thank you for tuning in. This is Three Men and a Basement, and we are the Ultra Crepidarians. My name is Colin McLeod.
Mark Colpia.
Timothy Magic.
In this podcast, we review movies and deliver to you, the listener, an average schmuck's opinion about hidden gems in the wide world of cinema. In this show, we try to target movies that are not blockbuster smashes. They're also not so obscure that you couldn't get your hands on a copy if you wanted to. But instead, we try to aim for that delightful sweet spot of movies that are right in the middle of those two. We try to aim for films that are, in our experience, too many people haven't seen, or maybe have only heard of, or ones that you may have seen but forgot about, and they probably deserve another watch. We review these movies, and then we deliver to you, the listener, our take on what they are, what we liked, what we didn't, and whether it's worth your time to go find it and watch it. So, in this episode, we reviewed Evolution. Boys, initial thoughts on Evolution?
It's been, since it came out, it's been close to 20 years since I've seen this movie. I can't remember if we got it from Blockbuster back when that was a thing. I remember never seeing it in theaters. But, yeah, fun trip down memory lane.
Mark, this has been a minute for you as well?
Oh, yeah. No, I could probably count on one hand the times I've seen this movie. I love it. I know we were talking earlier. I have a sweet spot for the sci-fi comedy. And, I can't get enough of this movie. So, I'm biased.
I also really dig this movie. I've seen this movie just an absolutely, shameful amount of times. I have a tendency to put something in my DVD player and then keep it in there for extended periods of time, especially while I go to bed. And this movie had a pretty healthy stint in my DVD player for a number of years. So, a number of years, actually several rotations through those years.
Every Bastille Day, I just popped on Evolution. It was just great.
It is a Bastille Day special. To kind of bring you around to what we're talking about, Evolution is a 2001 film. This is sort of the IMDb elevator version of the film. 2001 film. It is it's got it as comedy sci-fi. Gents, do you sort of agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wholeheartedly.
Yeah. About two hours long. The description that we've got going on IMDb: a firefighting cadet, 2 college professors, and a geeky but sexy government scientist work against an alien organism that has been rapidly evolving since its arrival on Earth inside a meteor. How do we feel about that? Do we feel like that wraps it up pretty well? Like, from an IMDb, from a 10-cent version?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that gets it, yeah. It actually, it's surprising that it actually even brings in some of the characters, I think is just kind of neat. Yeah. All right, directed by Ivan Reitman. I don't recognize that name, but some of you out there in cyberspace may know some of Ivan's other works. More to the point, the stars of this movie. We've got David Duchovny.
The truth is out there.
The truth is out there, and what Tim is getting at here is that if you haven't seen the X-Files...
What's the X-Files?
Stop this podcast and go watch the X-Files, because the X-Files is a delight.
It's tabs I keep on all the women in my life. What they're doing now, who they're seeing.
Yeah. Some people have a black book. Tim's got the X-Files.
I got the X-Files.
I like that. Yeah. Catalog it.
David...
Greg, you're in there too. Don't worry, Greg. I haven't forgotten.
David Duchovny, Californication, he's in that, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, this movie has a smorgasbord of big names now. I mean, David Duchovny, Julianne Moore, Orlando Jones, Sean William Scott.
So Julianne Moore. I mean, you've got Boogie Nights. You've got Jurassic World. Mm-hmm. What else we got Julianne Moore from?
Children of Men.
Children of Men. How did I miss that?
What's that, Jordan?
Wait, was she in Jurassic World?
She was, the second one, yeah.
With Goldblum.
With Goldblum, yeah.
She was also in Don John, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt piece. She was awesome in that.
Yeah.
I loved her in that. I think she stole the show,
Super talented actress.
I love her.
Absolutely incredible.
Kids Are All Right.
Kids Are All Right. Great.
Yep. Oh my god. Freeheld.
Yeah.
Which is also on our list to review, so stay tuned for future episodes. Freeheld is an amazing film.
Awesome, yeah. It could go on and on. She's got a catalog of movies, just ridiculously long resume.
Dude, how about Orlando Jones though?
Mm-hmm.
he hasn't been in enough things.
No, I mean that's
A lot of
honestly
a lot of small screen and voice acting and stuff though.
yeah, and like that's honestly like my biggest thing for Orlando Jones is like, why is he not in more stuff all the time? My biggest Orlando Jones movie, for those that like probably know this film, The Replacements, as like the wide receiver. Oh my god, he's so good. He was also in The Time Machine and Drumline. He was in a couple of others. Like, if you don't know who Orlando Jones is, when you look him up, you're gonna be like, oh, that guy.
I think a lot of people remember him from Mad TV.
Yes, yeah.
That's where I initially remember him from, like my first exposure to him, if I can recall.
Yeah, definitely. Also in this movie, Sean William Scott. We were kind of discussing this earlier. I haven't looked up the timeline, but this has got to be like right after the original American Pie. So Sean William Scott plays Stifler, as some of you might remember. Sean William Scott. What else we got him in?
Dude, Where's My Car?
Oh,
more recently he was in the Lethal Weapon.
A Goon?
Goon, I was just gonna say.
Goon. So good.
Loved him in that.
Yes.
Troopers 2. Yeah, no, he's you know who Sean William Scott
is. Yeah.
He's the bro's bro.
We've also got Ethan Suplee in here. Ethan Suplee and Ted Levine. So Ted Levine, you've got Silence of the Lambs.
Yep.
Silence of the Lambs, you got Ted Levine as Buffalo Bill. He is unmistakable both in voice and in presence.
You can't mistake his Oscar-worthy performance in Wild Wild West. He was the general.
Oh, he was Bloodbath McGrath.
Bloodbath McGrath.
Oh shit, I forgot about that.
Forget Wild Wild. All roads lead back to Wild Wild West.
That's
true.
true.
Saying it for years.
It's the Rome of films.
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon's, except 6 degrees to Wild Wild West.
Yeah. 6 degrees to Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
I've been trying to pitch that idea. No, but I think a few actors that have blown up recently. Ty Burrell was kind of a small part in this movie here. I mean, he was in it, but he's blown up recently with Modern Family and everything.
That was definitely like this movie was definitely before his heyday.
Oh,
and
for sure.
Speaking of like before the heyday, okay, I'm like 99% sure. I haven't confirmed this, confirmed, but like fucking John Cho was in this movie. Oh. I'm not crazy, right? He was one of the students. He had no lines.
Yeah,
like
at the dig site. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're gonna look that up and confirm that. But like, dude, I'm like 95% John Cho was in this movie, and I fucking love John Cho. Harold Kumar, fucking Star Trek, classic. Oh, actually, good John Cho film, and we should do this later on. I'm forgetting what it's called. It's he's in a movie where where it's like this weird kind of independent film. It's basically entirely through a computer, and he's like searching for his daughter. It's a really good film.
Just confirmed it was John Cho.
It was.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yep.
Classic John Cho.
There's a small part actor in here. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He's really big in the independent circuit. It's Daniel Aykroyd. I think that's how you pronounce it.
I think it's Aykroyd.
Daniel Aykroyd.
Daniel Aykroyd.
LaCroix?
Daniel LaCroix. That's what it is.
Yeah. I think
some
some
French
people.
actor.
A hint of lemon.
Yeah.
Yeah, got his own vodka.
Yes.
Skull.
He does actually.
Yeah. Dan Aykroyd's in this movie, and it is fantastic. It's definitely a cameo piece. He plays a governor, and you're supposed to be like, oh, there's Dan Aykroyd, but that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, you choose the scenery.
Yeah,
it's pretty fun.
And he he
has fun with it. Yeah.
His role is like bigger than you would anticipate. Like, I agree with you. I think it was sort of like a cameo type piece, but it was bigger than I expected it to be. Yeah. Also, Sarah Silverman's got a bit part in this, which I fucking dig.
She's at the Denny's. They don't ever name it as a Denny's, but it looks like a Denny's.
It does. It's got that vibe.
It's still that kind of diner vibe. Yeah.
And I think that's just about it from like people that like you'd be able to pick out of a crowd or out of a lineup.
You see a little bit of a bra.
You do.
Oh, yes.
Of Sarah Silverman.
I had to position a blanket over me so the guys didn't see. And I hope they're not picking this up in my mic right now.
Whoa! You went full boner joke there.
Yep.
Whoa.
Yep.
What?
Full
You
blanket.
guys heard that?
No,
Full
I didn't.
blanket.
Oh no!
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
Yeah.
So, just round robin on whether we'd recommend it. Should people run out and see this? Tim, I'm looking at you.
Because it was such my gritting review last week.
It was more of your boner joke that I was
trying to jump on that.
yeah.
Let's see here. We were debating when you were taking care of the little baby upstairs. If this aged well.
I would say just like thumbs up, thumbs down.
up.
Like, would you recommend like, yeah, go and see it or
yes,
yeah, give it a watch. Okay, yeah,
give it a watch at least once.
Okay,
and say you did, and knock it off.
I would say if you're not passingly familiar with this movie, I'm questioning my friendship with you. I love this movie, and I will unashamedly, try to push it on as many people as I can.
So I was like a little like unsure of this movie in that from a watching standpoint, in that like I feel like we try and target movies that people haven't seen, and there's like a whole generation, I think our generation, that has seen this movie. And I was a little unsure, and then as I thought about it more, I was like, basically everybody that's like greater than 15 years older than us and less than 10 years older than us, I feel like really missed this movie.
Don't even know it exists.
Yeah, it was a flash in the pan, because it was big when it was like it was big for its time and place, and then it just disappears. Yeah. And so I'm actually really glad, Mark, you chose this film, and I'm really glad, and just watching it again and getting the same chuckles that I get every time, and even getting some new chuckles, to be perfectly honest, as it's aged. This is a 2001 film. As the years have gone on, I'm still getting chuckles out of this movie, and heavy chuckles at that. I would recommend it. I would say go out, watch it. I honestly don't think it's going to be hard to find, and I think if you find it, you're going to find it probably at a good price. So get on that, listeners. We got 3, just over the 50% marks of, go and see it. So I think we're going to move now into our sort of personal overview of the film and shy away from the spoiler-free territory. So
are we going full spoiler?
Well, we're gonna go into our review of the film. Basically, our
or we're going to foreplay into spoilers.
We're going to foreplay into spoilers a little bit. We're going to do our summary, which can contain spoilers if we so choose. My 2 cents on this movie is basically like, you've got David Duchovny's X-Files character in very in very much that role. Like, he's really serious. He doesn't actually deliver a whole lot of comedy. Surrounded by this really hilarious cast of characters that are undergoing all sorts of absurd hijinks, and a meteor crashes into this town in Arizona where David Duchovny is. He's teaching at a community college, and he and Orlando Jones's character, who Orlando Jones plays a community college geology professor, they go and investigate this meteor crash. They discover that the meteor, in fact, contains life, and that life evolves really, really quickly. And things start to get out of control. The government gets involved. It turns out that David Duchovny's character has this secret government past as a scientist, and hilarity ensues. What am I missing, gentlemen?
I mean, that kind of sums it up. I mean, as far as your personal overview, I mean, what kind of connections do you make personally to this movie? What are your... You said that this spent a lot of time in your DVD player. Why? Why did it live there?
I feel like this is the kind of movie that you can really watch with like just absolutely nothing to lose. Like you could honestly start it in the middle, and you would still get chuckles. It's funny because of the way they deliver it and who's in it, and sort of how it's all pieced together. It's a very low risk movie. You're not going to be like, oh, why did I put that in? It's the kind of thing that like you could just leave in your DVD player for several months and just press play every night as you go to bed, and it just doesn't get old to me.
Yeah, I think if this movie was on TV, and you turn on the TV and you got commercials, and then it cuts to this, I'm sticking around. It doesn't matter where in the movie it is. I think for me, this is it's a sci-fi, it's a comedy. It's also like a buddy cop movie. This movie lives and dies on the chemistry between the main actors. The nonsensical, everybody pairs together so well. And and every character that's introduced, I felt, blends with everybody else in just the right way. By the end of the movie, I could just watch them go out and get a bite to eat, and I'd be entertained. It's about how they interact with each other, and just the unspoken, the body language, them reacting to the ridiculous. I mean, David, like you said, David Duchovny is he doesn't provide a lot of levity to it, but he anchors the levity. I think without him, the funny bits wouldn't be quite so funny.
Definitely.
He kind of takes the viewer's seat, I think, is David Duchovny's. You're meant to be skeptical. You're meant to be questioning the movie. You're a sane, rational adult watching this movie, so you're going to relate to David Duchovny, and the cast that surrounds him are there to play off of your cynicism, almost.
And I gotta say, buddy cop is a great way of putting this movie. I never considered that until you said it, and it really fits well, even though there are no cops. There were maybe some cops, but they're not the main characters.
Start,
yeah. That really does kind of fit the relationship of Orlando Jones and David Duchovny.
Yeah.
And because the best buddy cop movies have the straight man and the goofball, and that's sort of the way this movie plays out, with Duchovny as sort of the yardstick, and Orlando Jones just hilarious bullshit, just slapping against David Duchovny's metric, and it's beautiful to watch. And it's all it's not just verbal, it's non-verbal stuff too. Orlando Jones's delivery in this, in my opinion, is second to none because of his expressions, of his non-verbal delivery.
Yeah.
Agreed. Much like the anchor to this film, the pure act table is presented, and yes, to echo your point, chemistry is needed in this particular hour 40-minute movie. It's shy of 2 hours.
Yeah,
and it doesn't drag. And actually, yeah, like Colin said, you could definitely jump in, catch a laugh. It's very inviting, and I love how the actors. These are all respected actors in the field, but everyone knows exactly what they're doing in this film, be it either the clumsy gag for Julianne Moore or David Duchovny's, he's the straight man, but he's definitely not, taking this as serious as, the truth is out there, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. No, he's just oh, okay, oh, hey, General, yeah, this. And again, like you said, Orlando Jones. Orlando Bloom was seen in the background, just when the alien is coming out of the hole.
Yeah, he shouted, "They're taking the hobbits to Isengard,and then
handed it off west."
That's exactly what he did.
Yeah. But then Orlando Jones came in, and he was like, "Who the fuck was that guy?" And Sean William Scott, he's in his wheelhouse. He's definitely in his, starting to blossom as an actor on the silver screen.
So I'm going to jump on two things that you said in total agreement. Julianne Moore, I don't know why the goofy shtick. So, for those of you listening, basically...
She's a comedian in this one.
Yeah, so basically,
in this one.
She's got this thing where she's just clumsy.
Yeah.
And it's completely, irrelevant. It's totally unnecessary for the tone, or not the tone, but the development of the film. It's just a part of her character that she's really clumsy. She's always falling over. She's always dropping things. And it's it seems so out of left field, but for whatever reason, it works absolutely perfectly. The only thing I can think of is here's $1 million word for you, verisimilitude. And it really, it's basically small, seemingly insignificant details that help fuel your belief in a type of fiction. And that's kind of, I think, maybe what they were going for with this is for some reason, making her character quirky and clumsy, it's not technically funny. She falls over, okay, haha. Yeah, it's just sort of there. Yeah. But it somehow develops her character in a way to be more believable, more understandable, more relatable than she otherwise would have been if she wasn't constantly tripping over her feet. even though that gag itself doesn't actually develop the movie at all.
No, it just serves to pad out her character. It gives you something relatable. You know, we're all full of like little details that we don't tell people when we're explaining who we are, and this was just one of those little things. Like, you know, it just makes her, like you said, more believable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that served really well.
And the other thing that I was going to go after is Sean William Scott. Like, I love that this movie like really showed that he could do more than Stifler. And while I don't know this for a fact based on his like career, I've got to imagine the sort of notoriety that he gathered as a result of his work as Stifler in the American Pie series. He was so unlikable in that series, and everybody knew him as Stifler. Like, he didn't gain the sort of moniker of Sean William Scott for a long time. But I got to imagine that this movie helped later on. It sort of like padded his resume in a way that allowed him to say, I've got more range than just playing like the asshole. And I really appreciate this movie for sort of like helping him do that, because I'm a little worried that without that, and I don't know this for a fact, I'm a little worried that without that we wouldn't have awesome movies like Goon, you know, and stuff like that. Like, I really...
I want to pick at that a little bit. While I agree that he is definitely not Stifler in this, I mean, I think that you're adding nuance to him just not being unlikable. You know, he is still playing the dim-witted, you know, he is the joke in the room. He is the punchline in this movie. But I don't know if I would go as far as to say he's showing range, or rather he's just showing a non-Stifler side. You know,
see, like, but it's, to me, well, two things to that. One, I think to me, the Stifler side is the asshole, and Stifler is very one-dimensional. He's always looking to like put somebody down. Sean William Scott in this movie is very soft. He's not looking to hurt anybody, and the comedy that stems from him, even though it's like it's him being stupid or him being a goofball, it's very non-confrontational. It's just sort of like
a lovable oaf.
A lovable oaf. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, it flows very naturally from him. The other thing that I think that Sean William Scott brings to this performance, you know, not to delve too deeply, because he is definitely a goofball, is his facial expressions in this are much wider. It really does show a range that I don't think is present with Stifler. There is a scene that I'm particularly fond of where his boss, who is a complete asshole at this country club, you know, there are several scenes where his boss is like ragging on him and being an asshole to him, and then this guy gets fucking like attacked by one of these aliens and killed, and this woman runs in screaming, going like, something just killed Barry Cartwright, and like everybody's horrified, and it cuts to Sean William Scott, and he's got this like wry smile, but then he realizes that everybody can see this smile, so he tries to like cover it up with like, oh no, oh my god, and then like the smile just comes back.
Yeah.
It's really funny, and I feel like that's the kind of stuff that he worked into this film where like it's not like, I think in Goon like his range is really apparent, because he goes even dramatic, and he really shows his ability to take on different emotions. I don't know if I would say this role for him is definitely that, but like he definitely like flirts with the idea of like facial expressions and shit like that.
No, I agree. Do we have much to say about directing and writing at the table? I think I don't know. I don't want to keep gushing over this movie, but one of the things that I like about it is, you know, we've said, and I'm just going to keep rattling off genres again here: comedy, sci-fi, buddy cop. But it's also an adventure. You know, it's a movie that has a lot of peaks and a lot of valleys. You know, there are a lot of small confrontational moments that the characters have to overcome, and it just serves to build out the story. You know, it's not you can't describe this movie in one or two sentences if you want to be thorough. You know, I think you know, just a few examples. The mall scene was its own kind of compact, you know, moment. The scene with the alien coming up out of the basement in that woman's home. I mean, it's a series of scenes that are kind of self-contained in their little individual narratives. It really ends up making it feel a bit like an adventure. Tim, you and I were talking about before the podcast, there's just a transitional scene where they're rocking out to some Play That Funky Music White Boy, and the scene serves no purpose. They're just singing to the movie while they're driving down the expressway. It starts with the song, it ends with the song, there's no dialogue. And I think for some people...
Just a little clip fun moment that they were having as friends in the movie. Yeah, it felt genuine.
Yeah, it felt genuine. And Tim, you brought up that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe this is, the director padding out the runtime. And maybe that's right.
Maybe.
But it worked for me. I felt like it was just another moment where, the guys were just having fun. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading way too much into it.
I don't know. Maybe the B team, the second unit shoot was just filming that, while they were moving the Jeep from set A to set B. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Mark,
no idea.
you had suggested when we were watching this that Orlando Jones and David Duchovny have great chemistry, and you're absolutely right. They really do. And that scene is, I think, a perfect example of that. Mm-hmm. It really, It's like they just, like you said, Tim, they just decided, we're just going to take a camera and film them having a good time for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On writing, I've also got to say, first of all, very funny. And that seems like really broad, but what I'm saying is they have very, specific jokes. The comedy is tight. It's very specific to individual delivery. And each character's got their punch moments where they're just punching out a really funny line, and people are reacting to it and all that stuff. And and it's just really clever, The other thing I've got on writing is this movie is very aware of itself, and specifically, it's very aware of David Duchovny's history, and I feel like they use that pretty effectively. They didn't overuse it, and they could have. They strategically sort of put in points of David Duchovny's history with the X-Files and with, alien shit.
Yeah, but they didn't heavy-hand it.
Right, exactly.
At any point, it was just yes, we remember. Yes, that show that lasted for forever and made 2 movies of its own. So, yes. But at that point, I think it was only 1 movie, in 2001.
And I know... moving on a little bit here, I know we're all metalheads. Mm-hmm. How about fucking Power Man 5000 Bombshell playing as they think the fucking world's gonna end?
It fit.
It fits so well.
Yeah. The score was definitely an interesting collection of both songs from the radio and original, action movie clips in there, and sci-fi sound and soundtrack going into some establishing shots and stuff like that. They're rolling in.
Yeah, I love that there was a score to this movie that is actually memorable. I mean, I haven't seen this movie in years and years and years, but when it first started up, and there's this scene where they're panning over the deserts of Arizona, you hear the score kick in. It's this the weird kind of funky, just kind of silly tune, but I immediately associated it with this movie, and it brought back just a flood of feelings about this movie. It identifies it very well in a way that if you were to just start some other random movie, I'm not identifying the score with it. And this is a sci-fi comedy buddy cop adventure, and the score fit.
Yeah. If I delve deep, something that kept coming back to me as I was rewatching this is this is the template for a lot of those 1950 radioactive monster movies. I mean, they used an asteroid, and sometimes that was used in some of the sci-fi during the Red Scare era, objects from outer space, stuff like that, oh gosh, Sputnik, and coming from that. I love that they start with that template, and they had fart jokes to it. It somehow worked. I wanted,
Yes.
I wanted to come in and be like, does this really work? I'm like, yeah, it does. It's like,
Yeah, you can't start picking at the science.
No, that's actually a pretty good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. So not so much buddy cop, but buddy scientist, which we don't get to see anymore. You really don't.
Mm-hmm.
A sort
That
of
was
like
everywhere back in the 50s.
Yeah, a well-worn template circa 1955.
Yeah.
Something that has been shelved and then now in 2001 pulled, dusted off, and just a healthy peppering of fart jokes.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great way of putting it, Tim. I like that.
And the scientists are not overly patriotic, because that was one of the big kicks too. Is like, we're men of science, but we're also patriots. We're going to make sure that those bombers get to those giant ants.
We're doing our part.
We're doing our part as patriot scientists.
Yeah.
Werner von Braun, we're looking at you.
I've got to give this movie props with respect to practical effects.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they didn't really punch up the digital stuff until later in the film.
No, I mean, and yeah, exactly. And I think, like, okay, so listeners, we're on our 4th episode, but trust you and me that in the future you will hear this a lot. That my personal view on what the perfect hybridization of practical and CGI, practical effects and CGI are, is Jurassic Park. I think that's the
benchmark.
It is. Yeah. It is the greatest movie with respect to that, where they used practical effects where they could, and CGI where they had to. And they limited it, and they gave very specific direction to when you used CGI, so you could concentrate your efforts and make it not look like shit. And I feel like this movie actually took a little bit out of that. You know, it sort of took a page out of that book, and it didn't overuse the CGI. I agree with you, Tim. I think the later scenes where this really crazy shit was happening, obviously you got to use CGI for that. But if you're like making like,
how else are you gonna make a town-sized blob?
Right, exactly. But if you're making like a blue ape,
yeah,
or you're making a rock, you make a fucking rock. Or actually, I think the best example of this is probably when
no CGI rocks in this.
There are not CGI rocks. You know, you jest, but there are fucking CGI rocks in cinema, and I will fucking point you to those. And I will make sure that you know that those exist.
It's freaking called The Martian.
They're unreasonable.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree 100%. There's a scene at a house where this, I mean, I think I already mentioned it, where one of the monsters is coming out of a basement, and it has this, like, really weird, emotional old man face. It's clearly a puppet. And it's almost off-putting how this creature is emoting. You know, it just looks sad, and it looks like it's like a wise, old, sad creature thing. I'm not describing it very well, but it's very.
It's like a scrotum with a face.
I was gonna say
it's like like if you were an anthropomorphized scrotum, you wouldn't be happy.
No,
you'd be very upset with your lot in life, and you'd be hot and sweaty and uncomfortable and constantly being kicked by thighs. Like you'd be very down on yourself. This is basically, it's like a blue version of that.
But yes, we're calling it a scrotum, but like it looks like it's, you know, like you just want to be around it. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one at the table that got.
We're recording this.
It's fine.
You're on tape saying this.
I'm trying to be around that scrotum.
I made the joke about getting a boner, Sarah Silverman. I feel justified in that. Why are you suddenly attracted to the scrotum?
No, it's an alien scrotum, though.
Yeah,
that's true. That does make a difference.
It matters.
My therapist told me that makes a difference.
This is a
if
safe
it's an
place.
alien scrotum.
This is a safe place. So, Mark, yeah, you can delve into this.
Anyway, it's a puppet. It's fantastic. No, I think you guys are right. I almost feel like they knew going into this movie that they were gonna have a lot of CGI spectacle, and so they were trying to. I mean, who knows? I can't speak to where their heads were at, but they almost like they were trying to complement that with, you know, a lot of practical effects. Just because they knew that, you know, by the end of this movie, I mean, we already passed the spoiler point. There's going to be a giant blob creature that they're going to have to crawl into the anus of. Just casually. That had to be CGI. There's no way to practical.
I mean, much about
that.
Mark this episode.
Yeah, you know, it's deep. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, like, there's a really good scene where, like, so I described earlier how, like, Sean William Scott's boss in this movie gets killed, and then the next scene, basically, he shows up at David Duchovny and Orlando Jones's office with this dead creature that he said he caught on the golf course sort of after the events of that night where his boss was killed. And he plops this thing down on the bench. And to be perfectly honest, like, the thing, like, it looked really real.
Yeah,
like, it looked really good. Like,
I mean, it was a rubber monster. But
it was a rubber monster
on the table, you know.
Yeah,
it's like one of those those throwbacks to those cheesy B movies.
Yes,
I loved it.
And I will say, I've said this before, and I will say it again until my dying breath. Nothing looks more real than something that's real. So, you directors out there, like, you just fucking Cronenberg that shit up, or you Carpenter that shit up. Like, you take something that's real and put a camera on it.
It's not always their call, though.
We know you're listening.
We do know you're listening.
It's not always their call. Sometimes they don't get the okay from the budget from the producers.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, all right. So maybe my problem is that I'm directing this to the wrong people. Yeah. Y'all motherfuckers pulling the purse strings. Mm-hmm. You need to be okay with the practical effects because we like the practical effects.
Directors, have it on your writers. Have it on the contracts.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Don't let them boss you around.
If we're gonna
that last Iron Man suit looks like shit.
If we're gonna squeeze a little bit into creativity and intangibles, one thing that I really appreciated about this is that I've listed off half a dozen genres that this movie fits into, but one of the things that I really liked about the comedy of this movie is that the premise is not funny. It is not funny that an asteroid shows up and it more or less births monsters that are going to destroy the world. That's not funny. And even like the major beats of it aren't funny.
It's serious, there's serious consequences for every beat.
Yeah. What's funny is how the characters are reacting to what's going on. You know, I think a dude, where's my car? You know, I don't know. I'm blanking here, but a lot of these comedies, the premise is supposed to be funny, and they kind of fall short with the character development and the dialogue. This is all about the character. There's not a lot of development going on here, I guess, but the dialogue, the chemistry. It's about watching characters that you enjoy watching in situations that you've never been in, and you're finding pleasure in the levity that they're finding in the moment. I mean, there's a scene where one of the creatures burrows into the protective suit of Orlando's character. That is not a funny thing to have happen. That's terrifying. But oh my god, that was one of the funniest scenes in the
top
whole
3
movie.
scenes in the movie.
Oh my goodness.
Every other, think about it. Think about the Beatles scenes or the Scarab scenes in the Mummy movie, or the chestburster in Aliens. That terrified. Oh my god, it's so uncomfortable to watch that. But with Orlando Jones, it's like, all right, we're gonna make some butt jokes,
dude. That's so okay. That's a perfect way of putting it, Tim. And thanks for bringing up those 2 scenes because that's a good contrast to those. Like, okay, what we're not telling you is that this fly type alien gets inside Orlando Jones's suit, his supposed to be protective suit, and then these aliens are susceptible to oxygen. They die in an oxygen-rich environment, so they crank up the oxygen on his suit, and the creature is looking to get away from all of the oxygen. So where does it go? Up his butt. And you're right, it is sort of in a weird way reminiscent of the scarabs in the Mummy, or in the chest breakers, like the young xenomorphs in Alien. But it is fucking hilarious. Top 3 funniest scenes in this movie. Orlando Jones's reaction through that entire scene is absolutely hilarious. They go to fucking.
Like you guys said, he sells it.
He does. Yeah. They get him in on a gurney, and
Julian and David are right there with him. It's like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah, they're rushing him to the ER, and they're all there, and you just see this thing, and it's in his body, and of course it's going down his leg, you can see the outline of the fly running down his leg, and the doctor's like, we're gonna have to take the leg, and he's like, don't take my leg, don't let him take my leg. And then it like turns around and starts going back up, and it's like, it's
going for the testicles.
It's going for his testicles, and he's like, take the leg. And then then he's like, wait, flip over, I can catch it in his colon. And they flip him over, and the doctor's like, I get the forceps, I catch it, and he's like, doctor, do you want lubricant? There's no time for lubricant.
Oh, and this is my favorite, one of my favorite quotes of the whole movie. There's always time for lubricant. Oh my god,
it's a really good scene.
Don't clench.
And of course, like Tim, like you said,
like a champ, man.
Julianne Moore and David Duchovny are literally on either side of him, like coaching him through it.
Just breathe. I am breathing.
I am breathing.
It's a birth scene, you know.
Yeah. It is like that's a great way of putting it. It is like the comedy that comes from a lot of like delivery scenes in a lot of other movies. It's that, but sort of alien sci-fi.
Yeah,
comedy.
I don't know for sure, but I just don't think any other three actors could pull that scene off.
No, and it's
like
only Orlando Jones.
Yeah,
he's so fun. Like he's got such an expressive face, and like he's got really like. I think his biggest quality from like an expressive standpoint is he's got really wide eyes, and like they allow for this. They allow for this like look of like, are you fucking kidding me?
Right.
You know, like when they're down in this, the actual like sealed off chamber. This is where the Fly gets into Orlando Jones's suit, and before all of that happens, he and David Duchovny are standing there, and David Duchovny has a sort of pot?
Yeah,
what would you call it?
Containment vessel.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Good.
It is just a Cuisinart piece of equipment that they repurposed, but
in his hand, and he's like, and he just looks at him, and he goes, "Snag one." And Orlando Jones's eyes like pop out of his fucking skull, and he goes, "Snag one?" It's like, no, I've seen this movie. The black dude dies first. You snag one. It's just like
it's very aware.
It's yes, like his. Oh man, the combination of his expression and his delivery, to me, like if I had to choose a favorite person in this movie, him hands down.
Oh yeah,
like not even a question.
And I do love it that they are partners throughout this whole movie. Yeah, I do appreciate that.
And like Orlando Jones is interested in nothing more than just being like a really like effective Division III women's volleyball coach. Like that's his big thing.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you guys were not too keen on in this movie?
I tipped a little hint of this earlier. Again, when you were out of the room, Colin, because we have these side conversations.
Oh goodness!
Secrets on the podcast.
Right behind my back.
We were curious if these jokes, if they all age well. Some of them probably don't for modern audiences, but I just like with the 50s movies, I take this as an early 2000s movie. And I think you could make a movie like this today. You would just have to punch up the cast, punch up the jokes and the settings. It's just, again, some people will be like, oh, that kind of fell flat for me. Because, again, they're like 15 years too young for this.
Yeah, they definitely... I don't know, I definitely agree with what you're saying. There's a bit where David Duchovny and Orlando Jones's character are talking about Julianne Moore's character, and they're talking about how she, Orlando tells David's character that that she's got a thing for him, and David's character's just kind of like shrugging it off. No, she's just this ice queen. Orlando's character makes the comment, she just needs a good humping, and I am not delivering it the way it was in the movie. It's funny in the movie, but I don't know if that kind of humor really works so much today. Because they're definitely sexualizing her character. Not in. It wasn't as like offensive as some other movies have done it. But you don't really see much of that nowadays. So I don't know. I guess I would probably agree with that, Tim.
I agree, but I think like a viewer would have to be pretty sensitive to that to sort of not see it for what it was.
If you're taking this 2001 film with just silly sci-fi antics too seriously,
yeah,
where there's bugs crawling out people's butts. I'm sorry. Yeah, you just gotta let yourself go a little bit.
So
You gotta loosen it a little bit.
one of the things that I, again, I'm gonna preface this by saying, like, if you take this too seriously, like, you're probably watching the wrong movie. But one of the things that this movie does do a little bit of, and, again, it's kind of okay because you don't take it too seriously, is, like, it does sort of perpetuate, like, the ladder hypothesis of evolution. So, like, sort of like Aristotle's version of humans being at the top of the evolutionary scale, and evolution being sort of like an inevitable progression of certain states of organisms. It does do that a little bit, and it sort of, you see the aliens basically go through all of our evolutionary stages. A little bit of a jump, but what else are the filmmakers going to draw on? I think would be sort of my response to that critique. However,
it's all the favorite things from transpermia.
Yeah,
$1 million word now for the podcast.
However, the idea that primates are the top echelon of evolution is something that this movie perpetuates a little bit, and it sort of like loses that notion that like basically anything and everything that's around today is the peak of evolution, because that's what's around, and it sort of loses that divergent view of evolution. But again, that's sort of like splitting hairs. And one thing that I thought was really fucking clever, not to jump back to the things that we liked, one thing that I really thought this movie did well was like that progression of sort of like evolutionary complexity. They did actually sort of characterize that pretty well. And one of the parts that like I actually paused the film to go over was that one of the creatures sort of highlighted in the movie was this genus called Hallucigenia, which is a really obscure genus and kind of like an exciting point in evolution, in that like there's nothing around like it today. There hasn't been for hundreds of millions of years, and as far as we can tell, there was nothing contemporaneous with it that was even anywhere near similar. And I think like their attention to detail to highlight something like that is pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
They'll have this moment every once in a while. Screenwriters will nail something very neat about a field they're not familiar with. Like, because there's two examples in here that that the screenwriter clearly has no idea how to be a college professor of biology, and they also don't know how the legal system works. Because why was Julianne Moore allowed to question David Duchovny at the court? She's a CDC specialist. She's not a lawyer, and they didn't have counsel. What was that? Why was that scene in there? So again, screenwriters, like, again, little things you can jump on, but like, is it necessary? The screenwriters is like, why are they doing that?
Right.
Why are they representing themselves? You couldn't hire one extra as a lawyer. You couldn't.
Yeah, they hit their budget.
But I think
cover the periodic table in the biology classroom. Okay.
And I think everything we've brought up,
sure.
if you guys would agree with, I think everything we brought up is pretty much splitting hairs for like things that we weren't too keen on.
Yeah, it's just minor things, but it's just one of those things you can like. Oh, top 10 things wrong with evolution.
So a new sort of like segment that we're trying to roll out in this podcast or this episode is favorite quote. And I'm really interested to hear what you guys are keen on with respect to the quotes that really resonated with you.
Well, let me jump in there first, since the cat's already out of the bag. I already talked about it a little bit, but it was that there's always time for lubrication bit. That just had me rolling. I'm just laughing about it, thinking about it. Yeah, that was mine. And Tim, what do you got?
I like the wording. It was back when Dr. Reed, Julianne Moore's character, was listening in on their dialogue about them making, jabs at her sexuality. So like, and David fires off a, there's no actual sexual creature under all of Dr. Reed's neuroses. I'm just like, Oh, yeah, nice seeing some neuroses.
Yeah, that is
And
like
she's just listening in on it. It's like,
yeah,
calls him
she's-
out with his shit for it later. It's like, oh, we heard that.
yeah. No, that is super funny. It's all the funnier that she's like listening to the whole thing.
Yeah.
All right, so I got a couple,
right
and
behind me,
I'm
aren't
trying
they?
to I'm trying to narrow this down. But one of them I really like is Sean William Scott's car gets sort of like blown up by this meteor in the very beginning, and one of the scenes that sort of follows that, he's driving this like car that has literally been thrown like 200 feet in the air and
Again, practical effects.
Again, yes, practical effects. Like, and they really they really
broke up a
threw that
car.
fucking car in the air.
Yeah.
And like he's trying to drive, and this guy's trying to help him like close his door to this completely smashed car, and he's like, all right, that's fine, it's okay, I do this, and he like puts his hand out of the driver window and holds the door shut. It's okay, I do this. That kills me every time, because it's a really subtle line that he delivers, and he delivers it absolutely perfectly.
I bet that wasn't even scripted. You know, that it was the delivery of it was so fluid.
Yes. A couple others that I got to get down here. I know I'm doing too many here, but
I'm not counting.
yeah, two that I liked, that I like them because I use them all the time, because as I've said, I've seen this movie quite a few times. One was, man, I almost went down on that one. David Duchovny has these two chucklehead like idiots. One played by Ethan Suplee, that they're basically like completely useless, and he puts them in charge of the winch that is supposed to pull this meteor out of the giant hole that it's in. And they're all standing there at the both of them are standing there at the top, and one of them like trips and almost goes in the hole, and he just goes, man, I almost went down on that one. I use that more than I care to mention in my daily life. The other one that's sort of in that vein is when Orlando Jones, when they first collect the samples and they're running the tests, and Orlando Jones has to go to a volleyball game, he turns around briefly before exiting the room and goes, Ira, which is David Duchovny's character's name, Ira, are you sure you can handle this by your lonesome? And
The delivery's great.
it is. It's like this weird accent that he does, and I do use that quite a bit. And then probably my all-time favorite is the actual quote. Yeah, we're on 4. I
have one.
I know, and I will have
You
one.
literally quadrupled.
I will have
half
one.
one.
I will have one in the future. I promise. I do love. So these two chuckleheads that David Duchovny that are in his class, they both get a C- on this paper, and the paper is identical. The two of them submitted the exact same paper, and it's supposed to be about cells, and the paper reads as such: cells are bad. My uncle lives in a cell. It's 11 by 16, and he has to read the same old boring magazine every day. The end. That's so funny to me. That, I don't know, it's just like that really like tickles my funny bones. And like as David Duchovny is actually reading this out to the class, like they're like sort of like parroting the words with their mouths.
Yeah. Because they're
A
in
lot of
it.
your favorite moments do require a visual element to this, so you have,
They do.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of like, that's my thing, is like I really like seeing it in my head.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I can every time I see one of these quotes, I see it in my head and I hear it in my ears. Like it makes me laugh because I'm watching it again.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And the two in the middle were because I actually do use those.
Yeah.
Like I can just bust those out. Are you sure you can handle this by your lonesome?
All right, what else we got?
I mean, anything else on this movie before we move on to our ratings?
I feel good about it.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground.
Right on.
All right, let's rate this bad boy. Colin, what do you got? You don't usually go first.
Okay, so I think this movie, while I love it to death, and I think it's really like geared towards my demographic, I don't know if this movie is necessarily for everyone, and as a result, I don't know if I can just like go crazy with the rating, even as much as I love it. So I'd give this movie like a maybe like a 6.7 out of 10 nematodes.
Tim?
No, Mark.
Flatworms. Sorry, flatworms, not nematodes.
Okay. Let's see here. I would give this I do agree that some of it, is outside the demographic for a wider audience. It's definitely very much, again, that sci-fi with fart jokes in it, so it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. So I'll give it 6 Julianne Moore's jackets getting caught in the car door.
Ooh, ooh, I like the nuance there.
Yeah. Dr. Reed's jacket's getting caught in the car door.
That's a really interesting scale rating. I appreciate how creative that one was.
Well, I hope that I have not hidden my love for this movie. But just in case I have, let me...
How many bottles of lube is it, Mark?
Let me keep going into it. No, if you're asking for my review, this is my review. Okay, I'm not gonna think about the other wider audiences. I appreciate that you guys are. And I need to preface that because I'm about to blow your minds with Mark Culp's personal review of rating for Evolution. I'm giving this a solid 8.5 bottles of shampoo, and I'm not going to hide behind that rating because this is Mark Culp's rating, and this is what he thinks this movie is worth. I don't know what this is going to be to my mother, my grandmother, my wife's uncle twice removed. It doesn't matter to me. I love this movie. I'm going to put it an 8.5. You asked what my rating was, and that's what mine is.
I appreciate that. Like, I think that's that's solid and defensible. And honestly, if I'm being honest with myself, like, if I wasn't generalizing to a wider audience, I think I would have had at least another point on that. Like, for me personally, this tickles my funny bone. And I jam on that. And I also think of the 3 bottles of shampoo is definitely, like, I think that's got the best conversion to, like, US dollars.
Yeah. I mean, when you compare bottles of shampoo to Julianne Moore's jackets getting caught in the door, to nematodes,
Flatworms.
Flatworms, what have you. There's definitely a conversion there that could possibly require its own podcast.
There's a lot to digest there, Intrepid Heroes.
Call that guy from Mad Bunny, have him smash a coffee mug and tell us what the conversion is. Anything else from the Ultra Crepidarians?
Just to pick your guys' brain, how this movie came after Mars Attacks and came after Starship Troopers. Would you put it in that same genre? Just the kind of tongue in cheek, a little bit of the subverting the sci-fi realm to not completely taking itself seriously.
Some of the tone I think is similar, but I'm curious how much of it is like just because there are sci-fi films that sort of involve aliens coming out around the same time. Like if it's that, or if it's something deeper, if it's actual theme.
I think, and stop me if I'm wrong, Tim, I think you're kind of alluding to it's the sci-fi comedy angle. It's the disaster comedy. I think that, if that's the criteria that you're highlighting, I think it falls right in line with those.
Yeah. And, if you're listening to this and you sort of jam on those other movies, this might be worth a watch. Though, that being said, if you jam on those other movies, you've probably seen Evolution.
Right.
Or you should.
If you were looking.
Or you should have,
exactly. Because it came out a few years after, so you might
Sure.
Again, I know I didn't catch it in theaters. A lot of the stuff we watched in the late 90s and early 2000s, again, we had these stores called Blockbuster. Blockbuster. And it was lovely. That's how I caught a lot of my early sci-fi and monster movies.
Watch some VHS.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, that's all for the Ulcrep review. Thanks for listening. If you have any ideas for movie reviews or ideas for the podcast, email us at 3, that is the number 3, menandabasement@gmail.com. Until then, I'm Colin McLeod.
I'm Timothy Magic.
Mark up.
And we'll see you in cyberspace.
Peace.